Missions Pulse. Know God's heart, join His mission. This podcast is powered by Within Reach Global. Subscribe, watch, and listen on YouTube today. Visit missionspulse.com.
Welcome back to Missions Pulse, where we encourage you to know God's heart, join His mission. I would encourage you to subscribe on YouTube. That's where all the videos are stored and kept, or you can subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. I'm really excited today because isn't it exciting that God is in control? He sits enthroned in heaven, unperturbed by the things and happenings of the world, knowing full well that in the end, He will receive glory and praise from every nation, from every tribe, from every people group. And I really hope that this conversation today is going to share a little bit more, that broader, more macro picture of what God is doing in the world. Today, we're going to East Africa, specifically Kenya, surrounding nations. And here to join me today is Catherine Ligard. Her and her husband, Vidar, are the founders and executive directors of Safari Mission, which you can find, by the way, safarimission.org. What their passion is working to reverse the dependency syndrome that plagues Africa and teach people to come out of poverty and fix their broken systems. I'm really excited to hear more about this. And joining me today is Catherine. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yes, well, it's taken some time to get this going. I know we're on opposite sides of the world and we've been trying to meet for some time, but finally it's happening.
Yes, it is. That's good.
Well, I am excited to hear your story and your passion. Before we get into the passion of what you guys do at Safari Mission, tell me a little bit about yourself, your journey. I mean, every time I have a guest on here, I'm intrigued about all these steps along the way. What led you to this passion for missions?
Wow, well, it really is a long story, so I'm going to try to make it a little shorter, but originally, both me and my husband are from Norway in Europe. We both grew up there. And, you know, we both had a passion for Africa since we were young, since I was at least 9 years old. And for him, I think even younger. And that was just like a desire to go, a desire to be there, a desire to just, you know, be part of whatever was doing in Africa. And so, you know, I thought that my journey would go directly from Europe to Africa, but it didn't. He led us both to come to the United States. And, you know, we studied here, established a family here, and then he brought us to start work in East Africa. And so, you know, we've kind of gone through 3 continents to get where we are right now. But we've been doing work in East Africa, specifically in Kenya, since 2006. And so it's been a wonderful journey. And not something that you thought you were doing. You know, you end up doing what's in your heart, but it looks a little different from what you thought it would look like.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing how I'm always reminded when you say something like that, it reminds me of a statement by C.S. Lewis referred to George MacDonald as his master in literary work. And he said, "Man or woman finds it hard to get what he wants because he would not want the best. God finds it hard to give to man because he would give the best, but they would not have it." And he always wants to provide the best. And that sometimes takes us off the pathway that we envision for the future. And we need to be in that learning expectancy, that posture of expectancy, saying, okay, Holy Spirit, I'm willing to go where you'll have me go. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, when growing up, I would think, you know, envision myself outside of a mud hut, teaching a few, I don't know if it was adults or children at the time, but just a few people. But today he has us oversee 9 campuses over. We do Bible schools and Bible training and other things over in East Africa. We do an annual conference. We do book distribution center. We do like so much more than what I envisioned starting out. And it's just been a journey that's blown my mind. And if it was up to me, it would have been so much smaller and limited.
Yeah, that's an intriguing thought. And in a moment, I want to highlight more about what Safari Mission, the passion that you guys have, and on the ground, some stories of what's taking place. But I want to move back, let's say, to your childhood. I don't know how old you were. I have a similar experience. When I was 3 years old, I looked up at my mom. She was reading a magazine next to me. I was looking through the pages of National Geographic. I said, "Mommy, I want to bring bread to the kids of China." And, I had no idea what I was talking about. Years later, 1995, I was with Teen Mania Ministries, smuggling Bibles from Hong Kong to China. We had code names. The Bibles were called bread. And I realized I was taking bread to the people of China. So what is it? And then that led me to spend 15 years in China, now 7 here in Thailand. So what caused you to want to go to Africa? I mean, you're sitting there in Norway. And why is your mind ruminating on Africa?
You don't know. I really just think that God gives you a desire in your heart for something that He is preparing you for. And there's no natural explanation for it. I would maybe see pictures, videos from there, either on TV or maybe another missionary came in and shared. But, there's just something pulling, and I think that the Lord puts the desire in our hearts for what He has for you to do. And I don't even think it can be explained in natural ways, because it's just that thing on the inside of you. I really think that God's put a desire to do His good will. And I think that's part of the answer to that. It's just God starts putting that in even at the young age. You have desires that He places there.
I'm praying that our conversation today would kind of draw out those things from other people who may have had similar experiences, or may now, if they're young enough, be having those dreams. Let's move now to East Africa, maybe specifically Kenya. Safari Mission. Tell me a little bit about your heart and passion for the work. There's many organizations working throughout the continent of Africa. What is Safari Mission doing that kind of maybe sets you apart, or that reveals your passion a little bit?
Well, what we've seen being there on the ground is that a lot of the methods that are being used by other organizations, whether they are a mission or non-mission organization, is that they're not very effective. People come there, they spend a lot of money and distribute things, and sometimes they need immediate needs. I realize that if you're hungry, you do need a meal. However, if that's all you can provide, then you're really not bringing people out of poverty. Because they'll just be looking for the next meal that you can provide. Or if you give shoes, they'll just be looking for the next thing that they need for someone else to provide. Like, they also need a jacket. They need a sweater or whatever it might be. And so you're just putting a Band-Aid on the problem and not really fixing the root cause.
Yes.
And I think that's what we feel that we are doing, and that we are training people and changing people's minds so that they can grow into the person they need to be to provide for their own family. A lot of the street the kids you see begging on the streets in Africa, they have a family. And I wanted to find that out, because I thought they were orphans, but they're not necessarily. Most times they're not. And they just go to the streets to beg, and then at night they come back, because naturally we're going to give more to a child than to an adult. And so that's just the way of the family to get a little bit to eat that day. And so we would rather train the parents so the parents can get jobs, and so they can take care of their own family and don't have to send their kids to the street. Even orphanages are full of kids that actually have families.
Yeah, they're not really orphans.
Exactly, they're not really orphans.
Yeah.
But they're being sent there because they believe they have a better future there. They'll be taken care of. They'll be fed. They'll get an education.
Yeah.
And we're saying, okay, yeah, I understand that, but we would rather teach the parent so they can send their kids to school and live with their parents.
Yes.
We would rather fix the home structure so that, they have a good family life. So our passion is to really fix the root cause of the problem and really bring a solution that's going to be a solution for generations to come, and not just a Band-Aid on a problem right now. And so we really see that this is what Africa needs. Africa has had tons of money poured in to help. And when we look at the fruit of the money that has been used, we really just don't see enough results for the money that has come in. And we really believe there needs to be a training of the people, a training of the mind, a transformation of the mind, where they can take responsibility and become producers in their own society. And that really is our passion.
I hear that passion is coming through loud and clear. When you talk, I'm immediately cast into so many different directions because you're talking about transformation of minds, our mindsets. These are things that take a long time to do. I'm sure there's times when you experience perhaps frustration or just you don't see transformation of the mind overnight. That's for sure. I mean, I just wrote a book a couple of years ago. It's called The Mind of a Missionary. So I read a lot about neurology and neuroscience and the malleability of the brain. And we create these grooves in our mindsets that are hard to move away from. Do you sometimes feel that? How is transformation of the mind take place?
Oh, it's like you say, it's a lot of work, and is a lot of determination on our part to not give up, because it just takes so much energy out of you to change your mind. However, when we do see the rewards years later, we see it was definitely worth it, because we see a life change, we see a family change, we see a community change, and we can see that. So, it's definitely something you just have to have that determination that you're not going to give up. You're not going to quit. You're just going to keep doing it and keep doing it. And sometimes, that means that, as a missionary, you're really, you're dependent on support, from individuals and churches. And we've seen, a lot of, even short-term missionaries coming, taking great pictures in front of a crowd or with like lots of kids. And we know they were there for 10 minutes and they send us back, and, they're able to raise support for that. And then we are there. And because our strategy is more long-term, we don't necessarily always get the great pictures, the crowd pictures, the excitement, the excitement, because
no filter.
Exactly. So we have a classroom filled with leaders, community leaders, pastors, bishops, which means they have multiple churches under them. And, our pictures is like a classroom. Boom, there you go. But there's real transformation happening. There's real life change happening. And so, like I said, even funding can be more challenging because you don't have the great pictures to send back. And donors are moved by the pictures a lot of times. And they don't even know how to determine if they're sending money to a good project or not, because they don't take the time to look into that. They go by pictures a lot of times. And we've seen that happen, and so, but, we just know that God called us to do this. So we're going to be faithful to do this, whether, that's going to raise the quick support or not, because we just know that this is actually helping people long term. And we're not there for the money, we're there to help people.
Yes.
And so, but it's a lot of work. And so even though we have like Bible school settings, we do more than just teach, because we know transformation of the mind takes more than just teaching. It needs to be applied.
Yes.
So we do a lot of training beyond that, like when we have leaders come in, especially in the culture we work in, a lot of leaders are used to special treatment. They feel like rules don't apply to them. And so you put them in the classroom, and what we do is that we know this is a problem. So we treat everyone equal. We treat everyone with no titles, because we know if you start using titles, then they will start comparing themselves to each other as students. In society is different, but when they are together in the classroom, they had to be treated the same way. So we take away the titles in the classrooms, not in society. We keep them in society. It's not a problem, but just for the classroom setting, the training part of it, we take the titles away. They all are required to be on time, stay there, and if not, they'll all get the same consequences. They'll fail a class if they don't come the required hours. And not just that, but we require them to do cleaning every week and every day. And, for a leader who are used to special treatment, it's very humbling to have to clean the floors. We've seen that just transforms their thinking. And we also do some practical. We do evangelism that's practical, where they go out door to door. We do a mission outreach for a whole week where they get to plan, budget, do all the planning and execution of it. So we do a little bit more than just pure knowledge. We try to take them through a program and develop their character, because if their character is not developed, there will not be the same change that we need. So we do a lot more around it that really is going to break some of the thinking that they have. And it's a lot of work. It is. But, years later, you see a changed life, you see a changed community, and it's worth it in the end.
Yeah. Well, I like how you're talking about holistic transformation, right? And I also sense that it's not only a holistic, not only classroom, but practical life, evangelistic, servant-heartedness. But it's also something that is multiplicative. It seems like it multiplies rather than one by one by one. I mean, you're talking about sowing into the life of one who oversees many. And, it's like the Roman centurion Jesus was talking to. He said, I say to this one, go, and he goes. I say to this one, come, and he comes. But yet he's humbled himself in this position of humility. And I believe that the Bible doesn't continue to tell that man could have had rapid transformation and multiplication of people coming to the Lord. And I think that sounds like something that you guys are passionate about, maybe almost DMM, disciple-making movements of sorts.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. We see the ripple effects because when we train the leaders, and then, we don't have just pastors, but we do have pastors. And what we see is that the pastors go back to their churches and they teach the same thing to their churches. And so what ends up happening, you mentioned that, we want to reverse the dependency syndrome that is plaguing Africa because they are just, they have the mentality, and it really is us who created it, because we come and just give, and they just get conditioned to it, and they think that's how it's supposed to be, and that they think that's the only solution how they can get help. But we want to reverse that and reverse the thinking and say, no, you have the resources here. You need to develop the resources yourself. You can do this yourself. And so when you come in and do that, they take the knowledge and they teach their congregation. So we see pastors that go and teach about work ethics, that we teach them, financial stewardship that we teach them, just biblical financial principles. And we see that they encourage their congregation to go and start businesses. They teach their congregations to get a good job. So it really is a ripple effect, and it really just multiplies. So, we estimate that for every one person we train, minimum 500 more hears it from that one person. Okay,
well, that's the multiplicative aspect I was talking about.
Exactly. We have one of our pastors who was one of the first one that we taught. He is now over 100 churches.
Wow. Now, Safari Mission was established in 2006, was it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So we're going on 14 years now, almost, maybe just around there. You keep mentioning that life transformation or mindset transformation takes many times, but then you see someone's life change and it's all worth it. Can you give me an example? I know you just started to. I probably cut you off. I'm sorry to do so. Can you give me an example of a person that you thought, maybe, is this really worth it? Am I wasting my time? Is my call to the continent of Africa really what I want to do? I'm sure you felt those feelings. Every cross-cultural missionary will feel that. But what's one example of something that you've seen completely 180-degree shift?
Right. So let me talk about that. We have one person who was with us early on. He was a pastor then. And, we came to him. We were going to set up school in his church, because in the beginning we would just travel from one village to another and set up school. And so we came, and the ethical part was not what we were used to. He would take our food and just treat it as it was his, without we didn't really give it to him. We just took it, and we would call it stealing. But they didn't see it the same way. We knew he wasn't treating his wife correctly. We learned all those things that we saw as big ethical problems in his life, and, being a pastor. And so, but as he was listening to what we had to say, as he was taking this knowledge to him and growing, because for every module we do, there's some gap in between, there's some time in between, and they get to kind of practice and meditate upon it and put it into, practice. And So for every time we come back, we just saw a change.
Wow.
And so that kept us going, that and the commitment we had given. We had given him a commitment. We felt like we had to honor that. So those two things just kept us going. And, you wouldn't even believe it today, but he is one of our overseers today. And he is today teaching marriage and family in our school.
Wow.
Just complete turnaround. Not just that. Let me just tell you another story with the same man. Because, obviously he was taking people's stuff and stealing, like they didn't call it that, but in reality it was. But after he finished our program, they do a lot of co-ops there, not just as farmers, but they just pool their money together to buy bigger items and then they in bulk and then they divide it out again so that it's cheaper for them. And so there's several co-ops there and they all said, we don't trust anyone with our money. We don't have a treasurer because we know that they're going to take the money and use it for themselves because that's just how the culture is and it's a big problem. So, but after we were done in that area teaching, this pastor that I'm talking about, they all looked at him and said, you know what, we cannot trust each other, but we can trust you. We want you to be our treasurer. We know that you're not going to take our money. So completely turning around, completely changed and just impacting that local community, has a major voice in the community. They all listen to him and he has influence and just is changing that local community. And so when you hear that a few years later, you see and you're like, yeah, it was worth it.
Yes. Okay. Now that makes more sense. And I also like that you just mentioned that in between the modules or the teaching, you have practical life application, perhaps you would call it, maybe you have a different term, but I like that you pause in between. It reminds me of in our ministry with InReach Global, my wife is Filipina, and we use a curriculum called School of Workers curriculum, SOW. And you are not allowed to graduate from School of Workers 1 to 2 without doing some requirements, one of which leading 5 people to the Lord. This is not your typical Western classroom setting, right? Where you just read the book, get your little paper stamp and you finished. It's more this, I see it as discipleship. Discipleship's dirty and rugged and raw and gritty and sometimes very ugly, but it's not all about sitting in the classroom reading words. It's about life application. And it seems to me that you're really enhancing that aspect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we really try to work on the whole person.
Yeah.
And just like training and because we know that just getting knowledge without applying it in your life is going to be just wishful thinking. You might have the head knowledge, but it doesn't transform you. And so we do the best we can to engage them in whatever area we can in order to train and just like changing a mindset and training. Yeah. And so we really believe that that's important to do.
Well, we keep kind of going around that, and I think it's important because we wanted to mention that. Let me kind of shift gears here because there's books like When Helping Hurts. I'm sure you know about that book by Brian Fikkert and Steve Corbett. I think 220,000 of the books sold. Have you read that, by the way, When Helping Hurts?
I don't think I've read that one. I have heard about it, but I don't know if I really read it. But I think I've heard people talk about it.
Yeah, so I think what you're doing, I think probably the reason you haven't read it is similar to why it took me so long to read it. I did read it, but just a couple of years ago, because you feel like you're in the midst of it and you're in this community. But I think so many people see a need. They rush to it with a Band-Aid, like you said, but there's a much bigger sore to be taken care of. Let's go back to this idea where you talked about short-term teams. It is easy to raise money when you see yourself, the picture of a poor child, and people, their heartstrings are empathetic to that. Is there a danger, though, of this white savior complex? I mean, do you sometimes struggle with that? Maybe others look at you like the white savior complex. I know this is an issue that we need to address sometimes, right?
Yeah, well, in Africa, when we go there, we are definitely judged by our skin colors. They'll come up and they'll assume that you're rich and that money is just growing on trees back where you're from. And so they just think that they can come and ask you for anything they need, because in their minds, they've been kind of conditioned to think somehow that you're just rich and you're going to come and fulfill all their needs. And so we definitely see a lot of that in Africa, and that's part of what we're trying to change the thinking. And also when we come to report back, back here, we're also very careful that we don't picture ourselves of doing something different than what we're doing, because it's so, like you mentioned, it's so easy to take those pictures and bring them home, and everyone's like, oh, it's so awesome to see, it's so touching to see. Little do they know, I just randomly stopped and took a picture on the street, and I didn't really do anything for them, So we try not to mislead in the way that we are reporting back. We really try to report back what we're doing, but also sometimes giving them the ripple effect, like, hey, this kid did benefit because his parents were trained or his pastor were trained. So there's definitely the ripple effect that we're trying to show. But, it's just, we just see a lot of short-term missionaries come, they take all these great pictures. They didn't really do anything for them. It's just cute, Yeah.
And so I like what you say. It's just cute. And is Instagram #NoFilter, is that 10-day trip where you think, I just changed the world. I do pray that people would consider the long-term effects of things. In a video on the homepage of your website, safarimission.org, one gentleman in the video said, in Africa, the gospel is miles wide, but inches deep. And this is something, it seems to me, that you're passionate about. There has been access throughout, not throughout the whole continent of Africa, that's for sure, but let's say Kenya, perhaps specifically Nairobi and other major metropolises, the gospel is there. There is access. But what does it mean when he's saying it's an inch deep? What is he talking about?
Right. It means that, there's a lot of Christians in sub-Saharan Africa, and there's been a lot of evangelism done, which is great because you have a lot of people who've been born again. However, there has been very little discipleship beyond that.
I see.
So it doesn't affect people's lives. It doesn't transform their mind. It's just that, they got saved, but then they're there preaching because, you got saved, so you're going to be the pastor now. And there's no learning, no discipleship, and they'll just stand there, scream something, and it doesn't even make sense. So there's no discipleship of the people. So yes, they are saved, but that's it. That's where it stops. To be honest, you still have Christians over there who will say they're Christians and they still go to the witch doctor. And it's just...
It's that intermingling, that syncretism of voodoo practices. But I'll pause you right there and say, we've been talking specifically about continent of Africa because that's where you're at, that's your passion. But when you say that there's been lots of gospel access, but little discipleship, you know what I immediately think of? My country of birth, America, perhaps Norway as well. I mean, we live in these semi-post-Christian societies, perhaps post-Christian society already. Isn't that true of our countries as well? I mean, the gospel has been there for thousands of years. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. Hundreds of years in America, obviously, hundreds more in Europe. But it seems to me that discipleship has not transformed society as a whole.
So I think I understand what you're saying, because I think we do live in a post-Christian society right now. But it has affected society in America, in Europe. Because when you are being raised up and you are going to a job, you have a fundamental ethic that you don't steal, you don't lie, you don't cheat. I mean, that's like, of course, some people do, but society as a whole still condemns it. But in Africa, that is acceptable in the culture. So, for example, if you stop a random person on the street and you need directions, you're going from one city to another and you're not sure which road to take, not that there are many to choose from, but, at least it would be good to know if you're going in the opposite direction or the right direction. And you're asking, so how far is it? or like, is it this road or whatever? And so if you say like, how far is it until this city? They'll say, oh, not far. And it could be 10 hours. Well, why are they saying that? It's because they know you want to hear something positive. You don't want to hear something negative. And so they're going to just say what you want to hear, not what really the reality is. For example, this is just one example. Another example is, just like I mentioned with the pastor, it's but I need it, so I'm going to take it. I'm not going to even ask for it. I'm not going to ask for help. It's just like, that's how it is. And so that's why they couldn't trust each other with money, because if I have a need and the money is here, I'm going to go use it. It's okay. And so I feel like still in America and Europe that has a long tradition of Christianity, I feel like there's some basic ethical values that has been established that is just ingrained in the culture that is lacking in Africa.
I see. Okay. Thank you for that, expounding upon that. It's just that my mind ruminates as you talk about all these things. There's so many parallels throughout the world. I wish Vidar could be on here. I know we've been chatting for some time. You and him are leading this organization. Let me ask you this. Throughout the years, it's been, 14 years, Safari Mission. I'm sure before that with your deep passion for the African continent. What is the deepest desire that you want to see happen? Let's say 20 years from now, 30 years from now, what is the greatest thing that you can imagine that you would hope that the Lord would do through the ministry of Safari Mission?
I really just see a transformed, of course, East Africa, but even throughout the whole continent, of a whole continent raising up and coming out of poverty, having structure where there's chaos, because there's a lot of chaos there. There'll be structure, there'll be peace, there'll be, prosperity and development of things. And it's not just going to be people coming and doing it for them, but it's going to be the local themselves taking ownership of their own society and building it from the ground up. And just, it's going to transform the whole continent based on a biblical worldview and a biblical foundation, because we really believe that the Bible is the foundation for any peaceful society. I see, because yes. We really believe that the gospel brings peace and not chaos.
Yes. Okay, well, I'm praying that for you as well. And I know we didn't talk about a lot of the details, and there's a lot of nuances that you understand the bigger picture. Perhaps people are watching and listening thinking, wow, I kind of want to get to know you more. Can you help point us in the direction? How do people follow you and Vidar and Safari Mission and kind of get this passion for what you're talking about?
Oh, absolutely. Our website, safarimission.org, is a great way to start. We do a monthly video, what's going on there, that we post there under the blog. We do, we have testimonial videos so you can see some of the lives that we've impacted. You can go listen to them yourself and see for yourself, what's going on. We've written a little bit about what's going on. And you can also, if you want to get personally involved and donate, you can do that there too. We just all depend upon donations from individuals, some churches, but there's mostly individuals. And, we just encourage people to do what they can do. And even $5 a month really makes a difference, because for every 65 people who gives $5 a month, we can fund an entire Bible school campus in a remote area in East Africa. So it doesn't take much if we just all do a little bit each. And we have a building project as well on the coast where we're building a facility for training individuals. And it's a campus where we actually bring people in from all over the country for a second year program, and they all get to mingle. It's very tribal over there. So they tend to stay in their tribes, but we make them come together as one, and we train them for a second year program there. And so we also do fundraising for that. If people want to do that, they're welcome to send support, and there is information there on that. And we have Facebook and Instagram, Safari Mission. And so you can go there as well. We do have a YouTube as well. You can search for Safari Mission. So those are probably your best avenues to learn more and to follow what's going on. And we would really appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I was just on the website, and all of those places you mentioned are totally easy to find at safarimission.org. Get to Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all in one place. And I would like to point out, like what you just said a moment ago, people sometimes don't give because $5 doesn't seem like it's going to do anything, whereas it seems that money does grow in different places overseas, and it's worth more and it accomplishes more. And one last thing I'd like to say is that generosity, whether it's $5 or $100 or monthly, $100 or $200, it creates redemption. Generosity creates redemption. And I think that is not only about finances. When we give, that generosity creates redemption, but our lives as well. You know, it's the scripture that many of us have memorized, and we hold it up at sports events. John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave. And redemption took place because of his generosity. I pray that people would capture that heart, see redemption happen through the things that you are passionate about at Safari Mission.
Yeah, that would be great if people want to get behind us, because we're all in this together. You know, this is not just me and my husband who can do something on our own. We are dependent upon everyone else coming together and doing their part, and definitely financing the work. God's work is a super important role in the kingdom of God. And so it's just a teamwork, you know, together we can make it work, and we can impact people for generations to come. And so we're very excited about that.
Yeah, think with eternity in your mind. Now, finally, as we kind of wind it down here, think about all those people who are watching, they're listening. They've been excited. You're talking about these things. Maybe their lives feel a little bit distanced from the places that you're talking about because they've never been to Nairobi or Africa. What is one final encouragement you'd like to give to people who are sitting there in their living room on their drive to work right now? What's a final encouragement for them to be involved in God's mission in some way?
Well, you know, not everyone can go, but definitely follow someone and just, you know, do mission in your community as well. There's people out there just waiting for an answer, waiting for someone to go and minister to them. And everyone can just reach out to their neighbors or to the local community they're in and just get hooked up with that. Maybe go to a local church and you want to get involved in their mission projects or whatever, or find another missionary out there and just kind of hook up with the vision, pray for them, read their newsletter, send them a line. If something encourages them or you like something they're doing, you know, it can be lonely out there, and I'm sure you know this too. So just send them an encouraging word and just be there for them, and, you know, maybe send some support. But all those things can be a blessing to someone. And when you know that you're able to give something, it fulfills you as well when you're able to help someone. So nothing is too small, is what I would say. Just do what you feel on your heart to do, or where you feel like you can be a blessing. Excellent.
Well, Catherine, thank you so much for coming on Missions Pulse today, sharing your heart and vision, the passion with you and Vidar at Safari Mission. I'm blessed that you came on the show, and it's an honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. God bless.
God bless.
Missions Pulse. Know God's heart, join his mission. This podcast is powered by Within Reach Global. Subscribe, watch, and listen on YouTube today. Visit missionspulse.com.